Arkansas, Mr. Hill.
Thank my friend from North Carolina, and I appreciate all the witnesses. Very informed group and very helpful to the committee's work. And I do come at this from the point of view that our officers and directors of our companies have a legal obligation in taking their obligations very seriously as a fiduciary under the business judgment rule, and therefore something that's material should be disclosed. If it's a risk factor and it's material, it should be disclosed. If something's material financially, it should be disclosed. Not only for the 5 years covered by the 10K, but in the out years so that shareholders can be informed. And that's a fundamental part of our system, is that issue of materiality. And as a general statement, I think they do that. I've been a public company director. I've been a investment manager, so I understand that. And we balance that with the cost associated with these issues. And so it's a very careful balance, just like Mr. Zanga, my friend from Michigan, talked about the views of beneficiaries at CalPERS doing that. And it seems that over $130 billion shortfall, or whatever the number is now in CalPERS, has caused some beneficiaries to question that these decisions to not invest in certain categories were, maybe a bad decision in retrospect after doing the study he cited. But there's a bigger issue, which is there are fewer public companies. And so this issue is there are fewer things for CalPERS to invest in. So I think that's why we're so diligent here about balance. Conflict minerals, Mr. Atkins testified about the cost of that. I got a letter from a chief accounting officer of a $2 billion in market cap company the other day that's active has representation in my state. And she told me that they have $1 billion in revenue in this company, and that conflict minerals cost them $250,000 a year to comply with that rule. And they had no certainty really whatsoever if they were doing a good job or not. And she went on to tell me that in Form SD, she'd never had one question from an investor about the filing from their investor relations department about conflict minerals. And this is a company that sources different things in their inventory from around the world. I also come at this from the point of view that if we are reporting things that are material, then we can't just go from one subject to another and compel something is material because somebody thinks it's material, if it's not material in the judgment of these fiduciaries that we've appointed as board members. I quote here from a Fortune 500 board member, "We're asked as a corporation to take a public stance on very complicated issues. We've got crime in the cities. We've got 1,000 complicated issues that are very material to our civilization. But if we spend our time in the meeting taking public stands on all of them, I think it'd be quite counterproductive. I don't like the fact that people are constantly present this issue and never discuss a solution." And so I think our companies are sensitive to their philanthropic objectives, et cetera. But that director was Charlie Munger at Berkshire Hathaway. His colleague Warren Buffett on the issue of climate change and insurance companies, and since they're a big property and casualty insurer, they said there are more material things on any one year that are more material to their pricing, and that in property and casualty pricing, that changes every year. You're not making a 100-year decision, and you're able to reflect those different risks. My final comment on this was I read an article just the other day, and here's the quote. "A climate disaster triggered by the continued burning of oil and coal could result in the submergence of Florida, Holland, and other low-lying areas over the next 50 years, according to the Ohio State University." Do you all agree with that? Somebody agree with that? Because this article was written on February 2nd, 1978. So I don't know that while we're concerned about these issues, if they're material to a company, I think they ought to be disclosed. Mr. Atkins, are there penalties if you don't disclose material information?
Well, severe penalties from the SEC, but then also private litigation.
So I think if it's material, officers and directors ought to have the right to determine that and customize it for their report and not be compelled to a uniform standard set by somebody else. I thank my friend from North Carolina.